Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to reflect on Gordon Brown's comments about splits in the Conservative Party, along with a look at the antagonistic nature of the different ideologies that are going to spill over the next year or two within the party. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, factions within political parties are nothing new, of course, and they're not new to the Conservatives either. And when, like the Conservatives and Labour in the UK, really, you're trying to appeal to what politicians like to call a broad church. You are, of course, going to get these factions. Now, the reason is that in a first-past-the-post system, a party with a narrow political philosophy can't really win power. They can build up a grassroots movement, sure, but the best they can ever hope to achieve is some lobbying influence. To win power, you have to appeal to a huge range of political views in the country. And so you have to stitch various groups together in a, frankly, hideous Frankenstein's monster at times. Now, in my party of choice, the Labour Party, these factions are rarely harmonious. In fact, they're not at all harmonious. They can appear to be under control sometimes, when you have a leader that seeks to unite the party, but it all soon spills out again once you have a leader that decides to side with one faction or the other. But the Conservative Party have always seemed to me to be a party that keeps its disagreements private. Of course, you do see the factions and their work to undermine each other, but only if you keep a close eye on politics. They understand the weakness that public tribal fractures causes. Now, when I was discussing this with Christopher Wilson, who's an academic whose podcasts I've been appearing on for the past few weeks, link in the description below if you'd like to listen to them, he said that he felt that this could be explained by the fact that factions on the left are driven by different principles, essentially. But on the right, the principle is power. So when it comes down to it, that they will unite for that cause. But the Conservative Party may now be experiencing some of the effects of the same sort of tribalism that forces such long periods of time between Labour governments. The Conservative Party is about to go to war with itself due to circumstances that I don't think they've experienced in living memory. So let's run through the factions that Gordon Brown was talking about. So we talked about 6 factions, really. The soft Brexit faction, the hard Brexit faction, the Libertarian faction, the Communitarian faction, the Northern faction, the Southern faction. So we'll take them a pair at a time. So the soft and the hard Brexit faction. We can't say a no Brexit faction or a Remain faction because there's no such thing anymore. There may be within the wider Conservative Party, indeed there is, but Conservative Brexiteers they've again this weekend been trying to say that Brexit is such a mess because the government gave key positions to Remainers. It gave no positions to Remainers. Boris Johnson insisted that all Conservative candidates swear a blood oath to his Brexit cause to even be allowed to stand in December's general election. So regardless of how the current Conservative MPs felt in 2016, or even most of 2019, 100% of them are publicly committed Brexiteers. But what sort of Brexit? Some don't want to deal, or at least don't want a deal that means following any rules, which means don't want to deal. And the rest of them do want to deal, and they accept that all countries have to follow international rules in order to be international players. So you have 2 groups with, frankly, antagonistic demands. The time has now come for Boris Johnson to annoy one of these groups. At least he may annoy both, but he certainly can't please both. If we leave without a deal, the MPs who wanted a deal will be concerned for businesses in their constituencies that will go under. They will not fancy telling those who elected them to suck it up and look for the opportunities in Brexit. Oh, your business has gone under. That's a shame. That's your fault for being crap at spotting the opportunities in Brexit. That's not going to play very well. So they may invite the Prime Minister to look for the opportunities in being an ex-Prime Minister. But if he strikes a deal, which seems unlikely now, but you can't rule anything out with Johnson, then he infuriates the no-deal Brexiteers who only signed off on his withdrawal agreement because he told them he'd be sticking it straight in the bin. This will be the first factional war. And it won't go away with Boris Johnson, because regardless of what happens this week, the Conservative leadership will be dealing with the opposing needs within the party on Brexit for years to come. Because if the party let's say, goes for the no-deal Brexit and persists in that no-deal Brexit, it will just cause more and more economic harm. But if they don't, then it means more and more regulations that the no-deal Brexiteers don't like. No leader of the Conservative Party can satisfy both once the reality of Brexit becomes clear. Then you've got the Libertarian Faction. Now, they are opposed to government interference. Normally, they're a quiet bunch in the Conservative Party because the Conservative Party at large doesn't like government interfering. But the pandemic has woken them up from their nap time. Lockdown, face masks, not visiting friends and relatives, shutting the pubs early, social distancing, shutting the pubs altogether. They hate it all. There's too many of them to shout down, unlike in other political parties. This is why Nigel Farage is currently easing himself onto this particular bandwagon. It's currently an easy way to pull Conservative supporters towards him. Farage is not at all opposed to COVID measures. He even called for the government to act more quickly on them earlier this year. But, like the opportunity is, he sees the chance to gather followers. He knows that the government can't actually stand on the sidelines and shout useless, even dangerous advice, because they have to make decisions. That's the thing about being in government. You have to make decisions, and then people will judge the effectiveness of those decisions. Nothing Farage ever calls for will ever come back to haunt him. You know, if he shouts advice and the government don't follow it, he'll say things would have worked out better if they did. If they do follow his advice, he'll say they messed up the implementation. Perfect. The communitarians want more decisions made locally. The ultimate extension of their concept, I suppose, would be far wider devolution. I'm not entirely sure that's what they are asking for. But either way, with Boris Johnson having tried to centralise all decision making into number 10, he's woken up this faction as well. Then we have the big one for me, the Northern Research Group, and not just because I'm from the North. This is a group of MPs from the north of England, in grim parody of the European Research Group who took control of the party a few years ago. Now, this is the faction that will absolutely, definitely cause headaches for the Conservatives for years to come. Doesn't even matter how Brexit goes or how COVID goes, these will cause him problems, and they will cause any leader problems. Boris Johnson promised to level up the north. He promised massive amounts of investment, which the new MPs he has, from the so-called Red Wall, depend on. Now, what slender chance these new MPs have of retaining their seats in 2024, seats that even Boris Johnson admitted had been borrowed. They were traditionally Labour seats. If they've got any hopes at all of keeping those seats in any significant numbers, then that investment is going to have to be delivered. And the problem is that such investment will cost. Now, given that the Conservatives always insist on wasting lots of public money on unsuitable companies who just don't deliver just because they're friends or donated to the party, the actual amount of money needed will be all the greater. Now, let's make no bones about this, that means tax rises will be needed. Frankly, they're going to be needed anyway to cover their wasteful COVID spending and crap handling of the economy. The Northern MPs won't mind the tax rises to pay for the investments because people in the North will see and appreciate the benefits, if they ever come. But MPs in the South, who already receive handsome investment, don't see the benefit to themselves. Their supporters want to see tax cuts. And just as with Brexit, if not more so, Johnson, or whoever's going to be leading the party at the time, cannot please both factions. He can annoy both of them, he can raise taxes and still not level up the North, but he can't please both. And again, it makes no difference if Johnson is replaced. Each of these factions is powerful enough to defeat the government at will. If they decide to get snippy, they can do that. The Conservatives have a large majority. Ordinarily, you'd think they'd be able to sail through any piece of legislation they want to get through. But it only takes about 40 MPs to vote against the government with opposition support. And the government can do nothing. It will be as weak as May's government was. And some of these factions have 100 or more members. Now that means they don't even need all opposition MPs to help them sink the government. The way I'd expect things to go would be as follows. So one faction motivated along Brexit lines is going to be really annoyed. Well, it could be really annoyed next week, but it's certainly going to be really annoyed in January. If the government continues to mess up COVID, especially the rollout of the vaccine, I'd expect them to lose their temper pretty quickly. In 2022, MPs in the north will start to realise that, hang on a minute, we're getting to halfway through the parliament here, and there's still no levelling up of the north going on. But what if there is, Phil? There won't be. They will also realise that the usual Tory tricks aren't really going to work. So what are the usual Tory tricks? Well, there's twofold. First of all, the one they used at the 2019 general election. You shove a load of money into key target swing seats. You know, so seats that are a bit marginal, that your target seats, you suddenly, you know, throw a few million quid their way. And then you're saying, look, this is, you know, I know we've had hard times, but we're coming through it now. Here are the fruits of our labour. And by the way, if you vote Labour, then it'll all disappear. It'll all go away. But here you are. This is the Conservative government investing in your community. And it all goes away. All goes away. So you can do that. That's not going to work because there's too many marginal seats. Then the other trick is just to try and promise the ones you don't actually give anything, that it's just around the corner. Same thing again. You say tough times, but we've come through it now. We had COVID to deal with. We dealt with it all, and we've managed the economy really well. Green shoots. The same lies they've been telling for 10 years. By this time, it'll be 14 years. Green shoots. Just vote for us again, and you'll see it all next year. Promise you. Absolutely, we're going to level up the north. Tell the same old lies and hope people fall for it. The only problem is that we're talking about areas here who traditionally just don't trust the Tories. And if they don't deliver, they're not likely to give them another chance. By 2023, you'll have, you know, a bit more than a year before the next general election. I would expect at this point the parliamentary party to unravel quickly. Now, usually this is the time you would start to see these divisions melting away, and they start uniting, at least publicly, in order to appeal to the public ahead of the run-up to the election campaign. But the problem is, again, these splits may be too large for it to happen, because usually with factionalism in the Conservative Party, one side inevitably loses, like they did over Brexit in principle. But again, this principle of power comes in. But if you're in a situation where neither faction can afford to lose, if you're in a situation where these northern MPs, for example, are going, well, we're going to definitely lose our seats. And if we lose our seats, the Conservatives lose power anyway. So we naturally need to win in order for the Conservatives to win. If both these factions are utterly convinced that they have to win in order for the Conservatives to win, or for whatever other reason, then they won't back down. They won't put on a public show of unity because it'll be too important. You know, so at a time when you'd normally expect them to be on their best behaviour, they may well be splitting. And as I say, this could well begin you'd expect it to in the next few weeks and months, as the reality of Brexit first becomes apparent, and then after that, as the reality of Tory investment becomes apparent. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.